Ring of Honor, May 2004. We got Round Robin Challenge 3, and we got Generation Next. Two pretty pivotal. Good start, Kyle. Two pivotal shows in the history of Ring of Honor for many different reasons. We got titles switching hands. We got new factions arising. Ox Baker's here. Yeah, it's not all good, but some of it is. A lot of it is. Might be a little bit too much fighting in cornfields for my taste on this one, but I don't know. You be the judge of that. Stay tuned right here on the Apron Bump Podcast.
Yeah. And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. Yeah.
What is up, everybody? Howdy. How is everybody doing on this fine bump day? Glad to have you here. Glad to be here. Apologies for not having an ep last week. If you've been following on the X gimmick, you'll know that I had just a quick case of AIDS. But I'm back here, raring to go. Sorry if I'm a little nasally. Still, that's what AIDS does to you, but also fresh off the dentist, which I didn't think would have an effect. But I had a different hygienist today, and I don't know if she was new or if she just didn't like me or what, but she kept dropping, the little gimmick with the little suction deal, right? They squirt the water in there and then they suck the water out, whatever you call that, right? She was resting it like on the side of my mouth, which is fine, right? But she kept missing the side of my mouth, and she would just drop it down my throat, which I didn't realize till today how bottomless my throat is. So that poses a lot of possibilities coming out of it. So I guess it was a net positive, but the throat's a little raw. Got some gummy shit on my teeth. I don't know if that's the fluoride or the doctor's cock. That was it. Okay. This is start off so vulgar. I really tried not to, right? I'm trying to push this to a PG audience. I want to show this to my kids one day, and then they just have their dad talking about cum on his teeth. But speaking of cum on your teeth, we got Ring of Honor, May 2004, Round Robin Challenge 3, and Generation Next. Two shows that occur a week. Yeah, a week apart from each other. We got, by the way, if you're watching on the YouTube, got a whole visual AIDS, a lot of AIDS talk on this ep. Probably already set a record, but we got visuals of what we'll be talking about today. You can find in the description, whether you're watching or listening, what the cards of these shows are. I'll pop it up on the screen here if you want to take a look. But Round Robin Challenge occurring on May 15th, 2004. From Lexington, Massachusetts at the National Guard Armory. And then a week later, May 22nd, 2004, we got Generation Next hailing from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Pennsylvania National Guard Armory. Kinda. We'll get into that. Two shows here, one cup, and we got a lot to get into today. More depth than breadth this month, meaning there's less things, but the things that we can get into, we're gonna get deep in them. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get deep because the shows themselves, the titles, kind of tell the story, right? We got Round Robin Challenge, which is a yearly thing up to this point, which I don't know if I'm a fan of. It's so in the past. The first Round Robin Challenge, which was, I believe, the second ever Ring of Honor show, maybe third. But you had Bryan Danielson, Christopher Daniels, and Low Ki. They had 3 singles matches, each guy facing each other. You know what Round Robin is. No stakes involved. It's just like, hey, there's 3 of our top guys. Let's have them all have matches with each other. And I think each guy one match apiece, so it was a tie, but it didn't matter because there's no stakes. So it was really just a way to showcase your top talent with no titles involved or anything. And then they did it a year later, Round Robin Challenge 2, which was basically the same thing, but it was Christopher Daniels, Paul London, and Amazing Red. But this time, Christopher Daniels came out on top, so at least there was a winner. This may have led to a title match, I'm not sure, but ultimately it was kind of a similar thing, where it was just like, here's some matches, fuck you, here's a kind of half-assed tournament thing, is whatever. But here, Round Robin Challenge 3. There are stakes involved. Not only are there stakes, but it is a tag team Round Robin Challenge. Put more hats on the hats. So we got 3 teams, and we'll get into it. I'm just kind of laying out what we're going to be talking about today. 3 teams, and with each match, the tag team titles are going to be on the line, which poses a lot of issues that I have with this. Just with the titles themselves and how they're. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. But there were some good matches. Ultimately, I still think this round robin chicanery, we need to move on from this. But night 2, and by the way, I'll speak to night 1 and night 2 kind of within this episode. Night 1, round robin challenge. Night 2, Generation Next. So night 2, the show going into it was called Generation Next. Now the premise, as laid out in night 1. So in night 1, commentary was talking about night 2. The premise going into night 2 was that there was going to be a bunch of new up-and-coming stars, new quote unquote, because they're guys that have been introduced to ROH, but are still new and still haven't sucking their teeth in the many storylines or title chases or anything. But so it's like pretty new guys, a bunch of singles matches, I guess, and then the crowd would have ballots, and they would get to vote on who impressed them the most. So we're really catering to this fucking early internet, online forums, smart audience. Who impressed me the most? And they were talking about this on night 1. And I was like, this seems like a really fucking stupid idea. I hope they don't do this. And they they listened to me. They heard my discrepancies about this, and they answered it. How did they answer that? Well, again, stay tuned. We'll get into it. So we got the Round Robin Challenge, Generation Next, the 2 overarching themes of each night. We'll obviously talk about in great detail, but we'll also talk about the world title scene. We got Samoa Joe defending against Homicide in night 2, a rematch of, it's probably like their 4th match at least they've had against each other, but it's been culminating for a few months. We'll get into all the build-up and all the backstory. By the way, if you want more info on all this backstory, how we got here, maybe you're coming in cold, maybe you just turned on the Apron Bump for the first time. Well, thank you, first of all. But also, you can go to apronbump.com. You can go to the episodes tab. You can scroll down and select Ring of Honor, and that'll bring you to all of the Ring of Honor episodes that I've covered chronologically from the very beginning, from the first ever show, An Era of Honor Begins back in 2002, all the way through 2002, through 2003, and through 2004 up to this point, May of 2004. It's been a wacky journey. People talk about Ring of Honor. They're like, Ring of Honor was no bullshit. It was where just pure wrestling, just graps, nothing but graps. When in reality, and I've had other podcasters, I've had people that are very knowledgeable about Ring of Honor. I've had wrestlers from Ring of Honor back in those days. Monster Mac, H.C. Loke, among others that have, gallivanted about this time period. And there was a lot of wackiness in the early years of Ring of Honor. Well, it's not all good. It's not all Bryan Danielson versus Samoa Joe. It's not all Kenta Kobashi. It's not all, all that stuff. It's not all Paul London. There's a lot of suspicious storylines and builds and matches, and it's been a fun journey, is my point. So go check that out. I'll put a link in the description as well if you just want a quick click there, or you can go to wherever you're watching this or listening, type in Ring of Honor. You know how to find things. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Samoa Joe Homicide. We get what seems like the culmination of this. It probably isn't, but I don't know. Feels like it could be, but I don't think it is. What else are we talking about today? What else? Oh, the ongoing saga of who took a duty in the Carnage Crew's bags. that continues. Do we get a resolution? Do we find out who pooped in the Carnage Cruise bags? Well, by golly, stay tuned. More on that at 11. We got, like I said, new factions. Some factions getting, fortified, building up factions, but also some factions maybe on the downslope. New faces, everybody's favorite segment. And I think that's pretty much it. Well, there's probably little things here and there that'll branch off of these, but those are the overarching things. Why don't we start out chronologically with Round Robin Challenge 3? Like I said, coming at you from Massachusetts. I laid out the concept here. It's 3 teams. Each match is for the tag team championships. So we left off the last show with the Second City Saints defeating the Briscoes to become the new Ring of Honor tag team champions. CM Punk, Colt Cabana are your new champions, but they will be defending them at least twice because they walk into a round robin challenge to defend their titles first against the Prophecy, the team of Dan Moff and BJ Whitmer. So the 3 teams here, we got the Second City Saints, the Prophecy, and the Briscoes. Those are your 3 teams, and we'll see who leaves this show, the new tag team champions, or maybe they retain, maybe the Saints retain. Who knows? But the first show opens up. You got your typical Ring of Honor promos from a broom closet somewhere. It's a poor acoustics hallway of some sort. Colt Cabana's here. He's here to do his talk show, Good Times, Great Memories. But CM Punk walks in because Punk, I don't know if you guys know, Punk is not too much for the tomfoolery. He's more of a serious wrestler. This Phil Punk. He sees Colt with his goofy tuxedo shirt on. He's like, "Bud, enough of this talk show business, and enough of the comedy shtick. We're here to defend our titles. I need you locked in, Colt." And Colt's like, "Come on, I got a midget wrestler as my guest. It's gonna be a good." And Punk's like, "No, not today. We got a promo." Punk's like, we've talked about this before with Ring of Honor. I do kind of like how they like a guy's filming them talking, right? But that's not like the promo. That's just them getting ready for the promo. It's like a breaking fourth wall kind of thing. So Punk and Colt are like, "Come on, we got to cut this promo. You ready?" And Colt's like, "All right, whatever." And they put their belts on their shoulders. They take a deep breath and they're like, "All right, we ready? All right, 3, 2, 1." And then they transition. The transition from regular talking into, "Let me tell you something, brother." Like everyone's got to do it, but you typically don't see the transition. So that's something that I kind of enjoy from Ring of Honor. It makes those real moments feel more real usually. So that's good. And we got a little bit of that here. Punk, he starts his promo. And there's not a lot to it. He's we're gonna defend our title. We're the best tag team, all that stuff, right? But just get right into this first match of the round robin challenge. First of 3, we got a relaxed rules match. The Second City Saints, CM Punk and Colt Cabana, defending against the Prophecy. BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff, of course, Allison Danger is accompanying them. By the way, the leader of the Prophecy, Christopher Daniels, is still out with an injury after taking a Pepsi plunge off the top rope through a table. And this apparently has taken him out for, it's got to have been at least 2 or 3 months at this point. So it was a hell of a top rope pedigree from the CM Punk. I got to assume Daniels is off being Curry Man somewhere in Japan or something. But Saints, Prophecy, tag team titles on the line. First of all, there's a new commentator on this show, Mark Nolte. Mark Nolte. He's okay. I mean, anything's better than Ray Morrow. It's Chris Lovey and Mark Nolte here. Chris Lovey is also known as Gabe Sapolsky. I've ranted enough about him in the past. I don't know if he's getting better or if I'm just getting used to him, but he's basically Jerry Seinfeld on speed. And he's like functionally a good commentator, but there's not a lot of dead air. But there is more as time goes on. So commentary is whatever. I didn't have much to say about it. But new commentator Mark Nolte here. He seemed to be, I don't know if he was a former wrestler or if he seemed to be involved in the wrestling scene for years. So he at least gave a knowledgeable background to this commentary team, and the voice was fine. So all's well that ends well. But Saints and Prophecy, these two factions have been fighting for months now. You got the Prophecy, the head of the Prophecy, Christopher Daniels, the head of the Saints, CM Punk, two of the top guys in Ring of Honor at this point. So obviously they came to blows at some point. Punk came out on the better end, took out Daniels. So now the Saints have the numbers. But there's still much, much personal grudge between these two factions, I guess you could say. So like I said, it's relaxed rules. So they're brawling all around the building. It immediately spills out to the crowd, which me personally, and I just kind of turn my brain off when that happens. A lot of punching and walking in this one. The Second City Saints, they attempt to take a powder. They try to leave. But who stops them from leaving? The Dragon. But which dragon? I'll give you a second. Nope, not Bryan Danielson, not Shingo Takagi, not Ilya Dragunov. Ricky Steamboat comes out. He sees Punk trying to skedaddle, and he's like, no, sir, because Punk and Steamboat have been going at it for months as well. More on that later. But Steamboat comes out here, sends them to back to the ring. Dan Moff dives on Colt and Punk, throws Colt Cabana in the ring, and BJ Whitmer with his wrist clutch suplex onto Colt Cabana. 1, 2, 3. Ding, ding, ding. New tag team champions right out the gate. The Prophecy, Dan Moff and BJ Whitmer. It's cool to see Dan Moff get a title because he's the first face that you ever saw in Ring of Honor. It might have been Mac. It was him and Mac, the Hit Squad. They had the first segment on Ring of Honor. That opening promo, the first match. I don't know if it was technically a match, but they basically set the tone for Ring of Honor. And it took him 2 years, but he finally got a title. So good from off there. I'm sure it was a cool moment. BJ's there as well. He's a person. Prophecy leaves. They celebrate. In the ring, Ricky Steamboat's still there. He's, soaking in the crowd. Crowd's happy to see the Dragon. So Ricky's he's waving his hands in the air. Hey, what's up? I'm the Dragon, or whatever his catchphrase is. What's up? I'm the Dragon. But as he's celebrating in the ring, CM Punk and Colt Cabana storm the ring, attack Ricky Steamboat. Oh, my goodness, how could they? Actually, Ricky had it coming because Ricky has kicked the shit out of CM Punk for like 2 or 3 shows in a row. So he had it coming here. They set up a table. Punk and Colt do. They lay Ricky Steamboat on top of this table. CM Punk goes to the top. Oh, and the table collapses. At the table, so the idea was that Punk was going to do a leg drop through Ricky Steamboat through this table, but the table collapsed like as Punk was about to jump. So he committed to the jump while Ricky is like bent on top of this broken table. So Punk lands on Steamboat on top of this, pile of wood. It looked fine. It's whatever. Ultimately, it was just a leg drop, but commentary is really pushing forward the idea that the table breaking put Ricky Steamboat in an awkward position so that when Punk landed on him, it did extra damage, which I don't know if that... I guess you got to do what you got to do, but it was a bit silly, but they destroy Ricky Steamboat at the end of the day. Commentary is giving us updates throughout the show, how they took Ricky to a hospital to get checked up. They're really somber. It's like Punk just took Ricky and just shot him in the head, basically. This is how sad they are. But more on that later. Keep that in the back of your mind, folks. Keep that in the back of your mind. But ultimately, story here is that the Prophecy is up 1-0 in the round robin challenge, I guess. That brings us to match 2 of the round robin challenge. Prophecy, once again, now they're the champions, so they're here to defend their tag team championships against the third team in this equation, the Briscoes. Of course, Jay and Mark. Speaking of the Briscoes, they had a little promo ski on this show. where they fired their manager. Who was their manager, hardest part of the ring? Well, their manager was Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette came in and basically led the Briscoes to the titles. He kind of ingrained some of that old school Southern heel mentality into the Briscoes, and that's kind of how they won the titles. And as a viewer, it's like, okay, are the Briscoes heels or faces? Because they kind of wrestle like faces until they have to do a low blow or something. It was very kind of wishy-washy, so I think now they're committing to the Briscoes just being good guys because they're just exciting to watch, and people don't want to boo them. So the Briscoes are here. They fire Jim Cornette. They're like, because Cornette hasn't been around. That's basically what the idea of their promo was like, hey, you got us the titles, thanks, but where you been at? We lost the titles at the last show, and where were you at? We lost because you weren't here, so fuck you, Jamesy. Essentially, paraphrasing what they said. So no more Cornette for the Briscoes. So we'll see how that pans out for him. Bold move, Cotton. So they're here facing against the Prophecy, the new champions. Before the match starts, the Second City Saints come back out. Punk grabs the mic, and Punk's like, hey, Colt's shoulders weren't down in the last match. We were robbed. The officiating is so bad here that that Ring of Honor had to bring in Ricky Steamboat. He's, there's a conspiracy against them. You know what the deal is. But the match eventually gets underway between the Briscoes and the Prophecy. Very stiff. That was my note for this one. Very stiff. BJ, I hate shoot headbutts. Like, they never look good, but they do damage, which is like the worst combination for pro wrestling. But you can tell BJ's, he's hitting Mark with some of these gnarly looking headbutts. Moff gets in, starts going at it with Jay. He just tosses Jay with a German suplex, and Jay lands right on his neck. BJ on the outside cuts open Jay, so Jay's bleeding. A lot of brutality in this second round robin match. Prophecy gets control for a while. They're kind of, they're playing the heels in this one, so they're getting the heat. They're beating up on Mark. They're attacking his ribs to the point where that pretty much plays a part in the not this match, I guess, but the final match. Just another nugget to keep in. They're really targeting the ribs of Mark Briscoe. Mark's eventually able to get the tag to Jay. He's in with the House of Fire. Jay Briscoe has a fucking awesome hot tag. Just the Yakuza kicks, the flying Superman forearms, the suplexes, just good shit. Kicks for everybody, super kicks, Yakuza kicks for everybody. Jay eventually shoves Moff into BJ, sending BJ to the outside, and Jay rolls up Moff in a schoolboy for the win. So the Briscoes are the new tag team champions. So the Prophecy were literally champions for like an hour. They lose it to the Briscoes. It was a fine match. Jay with the roll up. I love he did the schoolboy roll up, but he did like a handstand. So he was maximizing the weight, going down on the shoulders, which is a cool little detail. But new champs after 1 hour, which is like, okay, I get it. You want to add stakes to these round robin matches, but like, do we need these titles flip flopping like this? Is like, because that had been a problem up to this point until the Briscoes won it. Like you had Special K had it and for like a month, and then the Backseat Boys had it for a month, and then it was just like back and forth, and the Briscoes had it for like 6 months, kind of bringing some stability to the division, and now we're just back to hot potato. I don't know, man. Not a huge fan of it, but it is what it is. So that is the second match. Briscoes walking out the champions. Prophecy are done for the night, so they will not be walking out the champions. So that brings us to match 3. The Briscoes defending against the Second City Saints, CM Punk, and Colt Cabana. So it was a rematch of the main event of the last show, which I've brought up a few times, where the Saints beat the Briscoes for the titles. Surely that won't happen again. My note here is, as I was watching this match, I was like, it feels like the tag team titles have been diminished. on this show. But that being said, it was a good match. They're still commentary still talking about Ricky Steamboat, how he went through the table at an awkward angle, and he might not ever walk again. His sphincter is broken in half, whatever they're saying. The Saints are kind of piggybacking off of the previous match that the Briscoes had, where Jay was bleeding and Mark's ribs were injured. So they're doing a lot of head-based offense to Jay and a lot of torso-based offense to Mark's, kind of psychology 101 here, but they're doing it very well. Fun stuff towards these two teams have really good chemistry with each other. There's at one point where Colt Cabana hits a tiger suplex onto Jay with a bridge, but Mark breaks it up with the shooting star press. So just the way all of the four are kind of blending in, and the pin breakups and the double teams, and everybody's getting involved. It's a tag team match. I've said it a lot of times on this podcast. A tag team match should be a tag team match, not just a series of singles matches. And that's kind of what these guys brought here, was a tag team match. Match breaks down towards the end. There's one point where Mark rolls up Colt. Punk breaks it up with a Shining Wizard, which is pretty slick. Punk goes for the Pepsi plunge onto Mark, which is how they won their last match against the Briscoes. But Punk gets dumped to the outside, leaving Mark on the top rope. Mark goes for a springboard onto Colt Cabana in the ring, but Colt counters it with a gutbuster. So Mark's flying in the air. Colt basically goes to one knee, and Mark lands right on his knee, ribs first, onto the damaged ribs. And then Colt follows us up with a frog splash, again targeting that midsection, and that gets the 1, 2, 3. So yes, once again, for the third time on this one show, new tag team champions, the Second City Saints. For the fourth time in the past two shows, new tag team champions, the Second City Saints, pretty much replicating what they did at the last show, Reborn. So a third set of new tag team champions on one show. Again, just kind of reinforcing I don't know if. So the overall story here is that each team won one match. So as far as the round robin aspect of it, it was a tie. So I guess the story here is to show how competitive this tag team division is, where any team can beat any team at any time, which I get. So I don't have a huge problem with it, but I can't say I was super sucked into any of these matches, just because at this point, I don't super care about the tag team titles. I know at some point it becomes very sought after. I don't think we're there yet. So the talent's there, but we just gotta. And also, it's CM Punk. There's also a couple teams here that are singles guys paired together. CM Punk and Colt Cabana, BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff. These are singles guys, in my opinion. Maybe not the Prophecy so much, but I don't know. We got some more tag teams being introduced here in the next show. So we'll see what comes of that. But the Saints come out on top as champions. But the Prophecy come out. they start brawling with every team. The show ends with every team brawling with everybody. All three teams are out there. By God, Ricky Steamboat comes out. Oh, he's out of the hospital. He hijacked the ambulance. He ran into the building and smashed in like Kool-Aid Man. Ricky Steamboat is back. He kicks the shit out of CM Punk. Just like the previous 2 or 3 shows. Whips him into the ropes. Does his Mongolian chops to the chest. He does the arm drags. But he amps it up a little bit here. He goes up to the top rope. 87-year-old Ricky Steamboat gets in there. Goes up to just the act of him going up to the top rope. The crowd came alive. It was electric in there. Ricky Steamboat comes off the top with a crossbody onto CM Punk. Follows it up with some more arm drags. And that is how Round Robin Challenge comes to a close. So ending on a high note for sure. Super hype. Doesn't matter how many times Ricky Steamboat comes out and does the same thing. It's always hype as shit. So good stuff there. So that's the Round Robin Challenge aspect of this whole thing. I guess the bottom line is the champions coming out of it are the Second City Saints, which were the champions coming into it. So, but like I said, every team beat everybody. It's even playing field. Similar to the first Round Robin Challenge. So it is what it is. But we're not done with the tag team titles here. Might as well just put a bow on it. From night 2, Generation Next, the Second City Saints, of course, the champions, defending against the Prophecy. Not a new team. We're not throwing a new team in this mix. Let's just make them face the Prophecy again. I will say, though, among all of the tag team title matches from this month, this was probably the best. So I'll give them that. So first of all, I think it's very important that we set the scene here for Generation Next. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this is coming from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from the Pennsylvania National Guard Armory, or at least it was supposed to be, because 2004 here, we're embroiled here in the U.S. in a war. So occasionally those armories get used. So troops, according to commentary, and I quote, troops had to be mobilized, so they were unable to have a wrestling event within this armory. So what they did was set up a tent. I don't know if it was right outside the armory or if it was like just in close proximity to it, but it was in a field somewhere. They set up this tent, this white tent. So just aesthetically, the show, opening up, the show looked like a carnival. Looked like, I don't know. It looked like my wedding, honestly. It looked like it's a big white tent, a bunch of people in it. It was, didn't feel like a wrestling show. I will say, like, after like an hour, it was nighttime and you didn't really notice the tent. So it was fine. But it was just a weird presentation of this show. It worked out, but I bring that up here because that aspect of it kind of came into play with this night 2 tag team title match. So like I said, we got the Saints taking on the Prophecy. Bitter feud. You get it. We've talked about it. Two pairs of guys that hate each other and want to kill each other or want to make love to each other's mothers, I'm sure. I don't know. That's 2004. That's what people were doing. Stiff stuff in this match as well. You got BJ taking a T-bone suplex from CM Punk. Punk drops this dude right on his head. Moth gets a hot tag at some point, just destroys everybody. He's throwing everybody around the ring. Stiff lariats for everybody. Fun double teams in this. You got the Saints doing a deal where I think it's Colt. He like throws up Punk over his head and then Punk lands a Rana on who he lands on. Prophecy with double suicide dive. So good team cohesion within this match. Fun stuff there. A lot of crowd fighting again, but they amp it up here. They fight outside of the tent. So they're like beating the shit out of each other in the middle of this field. It's dark as hell, by the way. You can't really see anything, but just the concept of it made me chortle a bit. Chairs. I mean, everybody has chairs in the crowd. Everybody's using chairs. This is a no disqualification match, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. But they eventually find their way back to the ring. CM Punk hits a Shining Wizard to BJ Whitmer. Colt for a 2 count. Colt hits a low blow and a small package to Dan Moth for a 2 count. BJ suplex to Colt. What? Hold on. All right. This is a point where I think I was talk to texting. I'm gonna try to translate this. My note says BJ suplex to Colt, double dives, headbutts from Muffin Punk. Muffin Punk? Does that just mean, did I just say CM Punk and I heard Muffin? Moff and Punk. Moff and Punk. We're there. Reset. BJ hits a suplex to Colt Cabana. BJ and Moff both do dives at some point, I guess. Oh, here we go. I got it. So I'm translating my own thoughts here in real time. BJ and Moff, who are teammates, double headbutts, double diving headbutts to the Saints. From Moff and Punk. Wait, hold on. Guys, chill out. Relax. It was not the Prophecy that did the headbutts. It was from Moff and Punk did. Sorry, this is a disaster. Moff and Punk both did diving headbutts off the top rope onto their respective opponents. Maybe I'll just have that, or maybe I'll just keep everything in there. Everybody's down. Punk goes for the Shining Wizard on the Dan Moff. Moff counters it with a lariat. But Punk is able to fight back. He eventually has BJ on the top rope, going for the Pepsi plunge. But Dan Moff and Colt Cabana both go up there and meet him. Everybody's fighting on the top rope on this turnbuckle. Everybody's up there. But Colt and Moff ends up toppling to the floor. And Punk ends up hitting the Pepsi plunge, the top rope pedigree, onto BJ Whitmer for the 1, 2, 3. So finally, we have a title defense here of these tag team titles. So the Saints defend their titles against the Prophecy. Fun stuff all around. One of the better matches of the month, for sure, I would say. Probably top 3. Yeah, so that's where we stand with the tag team titles. Again, a lot of hot potatoing, but good to see a solid defense there in night 2. And to wrap a bow around all of this, the Second City Saints story, I guess, here. Because Ricky Steamboat ain't done yet, fella. There is a verbal, and I quote, verbal confrontation scheduled between CM Punk and Ricky Steamboat. Not a match, a verbal confrontation. Punk comes out to the ring. By the way, he almost fights a fan, which maybe I'll even include that audio in this because that was just hilarious. Ricky Steamboat comes out. By the way, Ricky Steamboat comes out, his music, I don't know what his music was back in the day. I feel like he wrestled in an era where there wasn't really music. But he comes out to the Chicago Bulls song. What is that called? I don't know if they own the song, but that's what I associated with. You know, when Michael Jordan was playing, they would play Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project. Does that mean anything to anybody? I don't know, but that's what Ricky comes out to. I mentioned that because it's Chicago Bulls thing. Like, is this a slap in the face of CM Punk? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. But Ricky's out here. Look, you know, Ricky's here to fight. Let's not mince words here. Ricky's here to he's here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and he's all out of bubblegum. You know what I'm saying? He's here to fight, but he's out here. Let's talk about his attire here, Ricky Steamboat. This is 2004. This is like what every dad looked like in 2004. Flannel button-up, tucked into blue jeans, white sneakers of some sort, maybe New Balances, I couldn't really tell. I mean, he just looks like he looks like fucking Tim Allen from Home Improvement. Like he's here to spackle some walls. He's not here to kick somebody's ass, but who am I to say? Who am I to say? He's the expert here. Gary Michael Capetta, who is like the kayfabe commissioner, I guess, of Ring of Honor at this point. He's here to kind of mediate the thing. He's like, this is a verbal confrontation. There will be no physicality here, says GMC, which prompts the crowd to chant, fuck him up, Steamboat, fuck him up. So, crowd apparently didn't get the memo and no physicality. Punk grabs the mic. He goes off on this thing where basically he's saying that Steamboat is in the past and he needs to stay in the past. Steamboat retorts. He's like, you can't just encapsulate my whole career and everything I've done for this industry in one, 2-minute tirade. And then Ricky says, either shut it up, put it up, or stick 'em up. Wait, what does he say?
I've come here to tell you this. Either shut it up, put it up. I've come here to fight you tonight.
There it is. Tell him, Ricky, put your dukes up. He puts his fist up at some point. Do it. Do it. Is he not going to do it? Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, he's ready to fight. Salt and pepper hair. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So that's what's happening. Ricky wants to fight. Punk doesn't want to fight. After this fuck him up Steamboat chant, there's a CM pussy chant, which is fun. Punk just offers his hand to Steamboat. He's like, sorry, bud. I'm sorry for sending you to the hospital with a leg drop through a table. My bad. Here's my hand. Ricky takes the hand. Ricky Steamboat's like, oh, he's offering his hand. Surely I'll shake it and this will all be done. This will all be wrapped up. Fucking stupid ass babyface Ricky Steamboat. Classic. So Ricky grabs Punk's hand. Punk pulls him in, forearm to the head. Punk backs Ricky into the corner, hits him with some chops. But then Ricky comes back. Listen to these chops from Ricky Steamboat. However old he is. He's past his career, Ricky Steamboat. Listen to these chops from Ricky. So that's Punk. Ricky still got it. Do it again, Ricky. I think he has a couple more in the chamber. They are New Balances, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. So Punk rakes him in the eyes, rakes him in the back. No. Ricky definitely has him in the chop category. He has him beat there, at least from the acoustics. So here, Punk lays Steamboat out. He kind of gets the better of that interaction there. Dragon then whips Punk into the ropes, picks Punk up with a double-fisted choke. That sounds like something else. He grabs Punk by the throat with two hands, lifts him up, chokes him out. Steamboat goes back to the top rope, which prompts Colt Cabana, Second City Saint's brother, to come out, crotches Ricky on the top rope, which allows Punk. So they got Ricky laid out on the mat. CM Punk grabs a ring bell. Yeah. If you know anything about Ricky Steamboat, more specifically Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man and their feud, you know the significance of this. You know that CM Punk is just a fucking mark for that feud. CM Punk grabs a ring bell, goes to the top rope, dives off the top rope with this ring bell, and drives the bell into the throat of Ricky Steamboat. Prophecy come out, they make the save, but too little too late. Ricky's laid out. His larynx is shattered by this ring bell. Obviously a callback to the Steamboat Macho feud. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, are we gonna have a match eventually, or let's like, what are we doing? Feels like we're just dragging. I don't blame them. They have the chance to have Ricky Steamboat out there, a huge name. I guess this builds up CM Punk as well. So I don't know. It feels like we're spinning our wheels a little bit with this, but it was a fun moment. Let's not get it twisted. It was a fun moment. It was cool. But CM Punk comes out on top of Ricky this month. So we'll see if that continues, but that's where we're at. What next to talk about, gang? What next to talk about? Okay, so we talked about the round robin challenge. Everything about the tag team titles, everything about Punk Steamboat. Let's talk about night 2, Ski. I know we already touched about on night 2 a little bit, but let's talk about the overarching theme of night 2, Generation Next. So if you are familiar with Ring of Honor, you know what Generation Next is. And yes, this is the beginning of it. If you're like me, if you're like pretty familiar with this era, but not really, you know what Generation Next is, but you don't know how the show and the thing tie into it. Well, I'm gonna lay it on you. I'm gonna put it right on the desk, and I'm gonna let you gobble it up. So here it is. Generation Next. Yes, it was the show title for night 2. However, a certain 4 individuals hijacked this show name and made it their faction name, which I think is fun. So it's 4 up-and-coming guys looking to make a name for themselves. They've been on these shows a little bit before, but they haven't really gotten the spotlight. Well, they're here to change that. Alex Shelley, Roderick Strong, Austin Aries, Jack Evans. These four fellas form a group called Generation Next. And we have the birth of this month here. And it really starts in night 1, actually. Let's go back to night 1 for a second, because that sets the tone for what we get in night 2. So back to round robin challenge. There was a 6-man mayhem match, which included Roderick Strong, Hydro, John Walters, Izzy, Trent Acid, and Masada. There's a lot going on here, but Roderick Strong is in here, who is a member of Generation Next, or he's going to be in the next show. By the way, this is Roderick Strong's main show debut, which is fun. So wait, hold on. Hey, Bartholomew, before we get into this, hit that jingle.
New faces, new faces. Here's some people that haven't been previously on these shows that we're talking about for the first time. New faces, new faces. I haven't seen these people on this particular timeline before, but now they're here now, so they're new. That's what new means, new faces.
So Roddy was on, they had like an afternoon show. I believe it was Do or Die, which was like, it was like their NXT, kind of. It was like a lot of new guys, but it wasn't like a real show. This is Roddy's first real show here. And it's incredible how similar he is here to what he is now. He's still known as the Messiah of the Backbreaker. He was back here in his Ring of Honor debut. He was known as the Messiah of the Backbreaker. And that has stayed with him for 20 years. 20 years plus. Which is crazy how they just nailed it right at the beginning. Other guys in here, you got Masada, who we'll touch on more later. He's a member of the Carnage crew. Trent Acid, who was a member of the Backstreet Boys, who Trent is now looking to a singles career. Izzy, who's a member of Special K. Hydro, who is also a member of Special K. He's also known as Jay Lethal. And we're kind of at the beginning of his arc here, where he's starting to become a more serious competitor. Because Special K, if you're unaware, they're like rave kids, baggy clothes, bandanas, doing drugs and dancing. And Hydro is a little better than that, as we now know. So he's here to kind of make a statement in his own right. And you got John Walters, who night 1 they are in relatively his hometown, I guess right outside of Boston. So Walters is over like a rover here in this match. Before we get into this, it's a 6-man mayhem. It's just a lot of moves that happen, which, it's what it's supposed to be. I don't mean to say that in like a diminutive way. That's just what we got here. I'm gonna list off some cool moves that happened. But before we get into that, here's a little note from commentary.
Oh no, that's Becky. My bad.
And here comes Masada.
She's one Twinkie away from being Tammy Sitch.
Woo! I'm not going to touch that one, but she is a slut. And now we have Masada, the big bruiser of the Carnage crew.
So if you didn't really get the context there, they're talking about Becky Bayless, who was like the valet for Special K. She's saying she's one Twinkie away from being Sunny. Oh, she is a slut. This is fucking Gabe Sapolsky, man. I can't deal with this guy. But yeah, I bring up this 6-man mayhem just to kind of show this is where Roderick Strong starts off. You got a lot of suplexes in this match from everybody. There's one point where there's like 3 different matches happening at one time. You got Hydro hitting a spider suplex into a camel clutch onto Masada. At the same time, you got Roddy doing triple Germans to John Walters. You got Trent has Izzy in some sort of head-leg submission. There's another spot where Izzy's on Trent's shoulders and Walters backstabs Izzy off of his shoulders, which looked pretty brutal. Hydro hits a springboard DDT onto John Walters. You got Masada throwing out a fisherman neckbreaker to Hydro. Roderick Strong hits a draping backbreaker to Masada. And towards the end, Hydro and Izzy, both Special K members, so they're working together throughout this entire match, they go for a double superplex onto John Walters. Walters dumps Hydro to the outside and hits his finisher is like a cliffhanger DDT. So it's like you pick the guy up, his back is on your shoulders, and then you flip him around into a DDT. It's kind of like the Dominator, but into a DDT. So Walters goes for this off the second rope, but it ended up looking more just like a Dominator. It looked a little clunky, but it looked pretty devastating, so I guess it all worked. But that gets the win. So John Walters pins Izzy, gets the win here in the 6-man mayhem, getting a big win in his hometown. It's fun stuff. It's chaotic, but it's, I'm into it as I'm watching this kind of stuff. So I've said this before, early 2000s, mid 2000s, there's a big chunk of the wrestling audience has an appetite for just innovation, just fun moves. Nowadays, it's like a dime a dozen, but back then it was like, okay, we've had to sit through too many Rico matches on Raw. You know what I'm saying? Too many Nathan Jones, Matt Morgan bullshit on Smack. Like, just give me some fun moves and high energy stuff, devastating looking maneuvers. That's all Daddy wants. Nobody wants a whole show of that, but you sprinkle in these scrambly type matches. I dig it. I dig it. It's kind of a hallmark of Ring of Honor at this point. So it's just also, by the way, like the fact that they're able to put these matches together in a somewhat cohesive way is super impressive. I just have to say that. I mean, there's a lot of moves happening, a lot of moving parts, and some of these guys are pretty new to the business. And the fact that this was able to be, somewhat kind of, it was able to thread its way through the whole thing. Everybody knew where they had to be. It was just impressive stuff from all 6 guys. Big fan of it. Big fan of it. But let's not get too far away from the real subject here. And that's Generation Next. So Roddy was not able to get a win in his first match. However, this show ends with an Alex Shelley promo backstage. He says a lot of things, but TLDR, he says that he has a surprise for next week, for night 2. He cuts his promo, he's saying all of his things, and then there's a cut. Whoever's behind the camera's, all right, cut. Thanks, Alex. And Alex is like, all right, thanks. And then the camera pans over and you see Roddy Strong with him. The question is, are these two in cahoots? By the way, it cuts over to Roddy and Alex is like, all right, let's get out of here. All right, so backbreakers, huh? Which I just like the thought that in their free time, they just talk about backbreakers. Maybe Roddy does that to this day. Who knows? Call in if you know. But that brings us to night 2. Actually, just quickly, before we get to night 2, night 1, Alex Shelley had a match as well against Matt Striker, and I guess they're going to have a best out of 3 series. So Matt Striker, he's pure division, technical wrestler type of guy. Alex Shelley, similar vein, but he has the charisma to kind of amplify that. Just a fun technical match between these two guys. I'm not going to get super deep into it, but kind of pushing this pure division. AJ Styles, unless I'm forgetting, AJ Styles is still the pure champion, but they're still amongst like the separation between Ring of Honor and TNA, and I don't know how that pans out, but there's no pure title this month. So we're going to have to figure that out at some point. But this match kind of seemed to be a pure title division type of match. Matt Striker hits his Death Valley driver, or at least goes for it, but Shelley rolls off and wins with some sort of cradle. He locks his leg within Matt's leg, and then does it's like AJ's calf crusher, but in reverse. If that makes any sense, probably not. But Alex Shelley gets the win over Matt Striker, so he gets a big win in night 1, which sets him up pretty dandy for night 2. Generation Next. Let's get into it. Enough vamping. Enough preface. Enough preamble. Let's get into Generation Next. Show starts out. First match scheduled is the Ring Crew Express versus the Christopher Street Connection, throwback, versus Special K. So we got a 3-man or a 3-team scramble tag team match, whatever. Each team comes out. I'm sorry. It's just the Christopher Street Connection that comes out, which, by the way, if you're like a recent listener of the Apron Bump, you might not have heard me talking about the Christopher Street Connection. Here's their gimmick. They're gay. So the Christopher Street Connections, they come out and they make out with each other in the middle of the ring because they're heels. And this brings out Generation Next. Again, Alex Shelley, Roderick Strong, Austin Aries, Jack Evans. All 4 of these guys come out. which at this point they haven't established themselves as Generation Next. As watching this is 4 random guys coming out. 4 guys that were going to be involved in the Generation Next concept. Remember, because initially Generation Next was supposed to be a series of matches, and the fans were going to have ballots and vote on who impressed them the most. So these 4 gentlemen walk out. Alex Shelley has the mic. He introduces everybody. This is Roddy Strong, Messiah the Backbreaker. This is Austin Aries, most explosive wrestler there is. There's Jack Evans. He does a lot of flips. Alex Shelley says there's not going to be any votes tonight. No votes to be had. He takes the ballots and then he rips them. Just like the liberals. Just kidding. So no votes to be had. Dunn and Marcos, who are out there, the Ring Crew Express, they feel insulted by this. These 4 guys are here to just take our spots. Well, we're not going to take that anymore. If you've been listening to my past couple episodes, you know that's their thing where they like get in fights with Twisted Sister playing on the speakers. We're not going to take it. And it's the whole thing. But this time they are not able to, that song is not able to channel power out of them, because they eventually get their ass kicked by Generation Next because of the numbers game, which this brings out Special K to, I guess, make the save. I don't know. But what comes out of this, so that first match doesn't happen, but now we got an impromptu 8-man tag team match. By the way, in that promo that Shelley was, laying out, he dubs them, those 4 gentlemen, Generation Next. So now we have a new faction in Ring of Honor, Generation Next, and they immediately have a match, those 4, against Special K, represented by Angel Dust, Dixie, and Izzy. Just 3 of them. Maybe it's just the cage match is telling me it's just 3 of them. So I guess it's 4-on-3. So basically, this show, Generation Next, is designed to get this new faction over, and I think they did a great job at doing that. They're kind of like, and it's an interesting. This is the interesting part about factions in Ring of Honor, at least in this case. So Ring of Honor, they push forward this idea that there's a code of honor. You shake hands before every match. No outside interference. There's no attacking the referees, all that stuff, right? And so when those things do happen, that's a big deal. So just because we have this new heel renegade faction entering the fray doesn't mean they're like, it's not like what every faction does nowadays, where every faction is trying to be NWO or Nexus, where they're like, we're taking over, we're going to wreck the backstage area, we're going to spray paint all over the walls, and we're going to wear bandanas. And not every faction has to be that. Like Generation Next, they're 4 guys, we're kind of dickheads, but they still shake hands before matches. They wrestle within the rules, but they're just using their numbers to kind of, I think Alex Shelley says something some point in this night. He's like, we're not here to climb the ladder. We're here to take out the rungs from underneath you, or something like that, right? And it's a good way of illustrating that they're here, but they're going to earn it, but they're going to put themselves in a position to earn it. They're going to take that spot to earn it. And that's the theme of this show, is that they're taking everybody's spot. Like this opening match, it was supposed to be a 2-on-2-on-2 match, but they took the spot of 2 of the teams, so now it's a 4-on-3 match. And so all 4 Generation Next guys, they take on Special K. They win the match. Generation Next do. The finish was awesome. Like, so it was 3 sets of moves done in a bam, bam, bam way. So you have Aries does a 450. Roddy does a Widow's Peak backbreaker. And Jack Evans does a 630. Each onto a different Special K guy. So it's 450, Widow's Peak, 630, boosh, boosh, boosh. And it's a triple pin. Huge, like, dominant win. Really establishes this new faction. Just did it really well. Really, really good stuff there. They made a statement with it. And it made me interested into what they're going to do in the future. And the future is the rest of the show, because Alex Shelley grabs the mic after the match and says, Special K, look, you guys don't have one real wrestler in your group. You're just a bunch of kids in baggy pants. And this prompts Hydro to step up, which, as we mentioned earlier, is Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal is looking to prove himself as a legit, serious wrestler. So Hydro steps up because he wasn't in that previous match. Hydro steps up and he's like, he basically challenges Alex Shelley to a match. And then Shelley's like, let's do the damn thing. Crowd's chanting for Hydro. So the crowd's really into him. They're into Jay Lethal at this point a lot. They're also into Shelley, by the way. This crowd loved Generation Next. They respect all four of these guys. Like, that's a testament to how, not really how big they are, but just how respected they are in this community. Like, this fan segment that watches Ring of Honor, they're fans of all these guys. So I think that's why this faction worked so well also. Even though they're kind of trying to be heels, the crowd was into them, if nothing else. It wasn't like a flop of any sort. But this sets up a match between Alex Shelley and Jay Lethal, which we're seeing a similar feud in my TNA timeline now, which is funny. This is funny how time works sometimes. But so we got Hydro versus Alex Shelley. By the way, this I made a note here. It's very jarring. It's something that's probably been prevalent on a lot of shows, but I noticed it on this one specifically. 2004. Why does every independent wrestler have to wrestle in basketball shorts? Everyone. Low Key. CM Punk. Homicide. HC Loke is here in basketball shorts. Alex Shelley is here in basketball shorts. Hydro's wrestling in basketball shorts. All the Special K guys, like, everybody. Like, I get the comfort. I mean, the functionality is there, but goddamn, everybody. It was particularly jarring to see Alex Shelley in basketball shorts, but these guys have a match, well, less chaotic than the previous, 8-man or 7-man, whatever it was. Alex Shelley, Jay Lethal. If you know these guys, you know what kind of match it's going to be. You got Alex Shelley busting out some really unique submissions. And Jay Lethal doesn't get a ton of offense in. This match felt like 95% Alex Shelley doing moves on him. But he's being portrayed as like the leader of this group, or at least a mouthpiece, so it makes sense. Alex Shelley eventually hits the shell shock onto Jay Lethal, which is kind of like a Blade Runner, Sister Abigail type of thing, or like a DDT. And then he locks in the Border City Stretch, which is like a Gargano escape. So Alex Shelley taps out Jay Lethal. Again, a pretty dominant match. But the crowd's still really into Lethal here. Crowd's also into Shelley. They're into the faction in general. But after the match, Shelley once again grabs the mic. He looks at Jay Lethal and he's like, hey, buddy, we'd like to offer you a spot in this little faction of ours. But Hydro rejects it and walks away. Alex Shelley's like, all right, buddy, but you know where you belong. You know you belong with us. So we'll see if that materializes into anything. But right up the gate, Generation Next. You got 3 of them winning a match. Or I guess it was a 6-man. I said it was an 8-man earlier, but it was a 6-man. They won their 6-man match to open the show, and their 4th guy won a singles match. So they're out strong here. Later in the show, we got a match between Jimmy Rave and John Walters. Before the match can get underway, Generation Next is out. All 4 guys come out. They all get on the apron. Alex Shelley says, we're taking your spot. And this is the part where he says, we're not going to climb the ladder. We're going to take the rungs from underneath you. And like jackals, these 4 guys attack both John Walters and Jimmy Rave. Roddy with a brutal straight jacket pile driver to John Walters, injuring his neck in the process. So these guys can wrestle, but they're also ruthless. So these guys, for the most part, they respect the code of honor, but they're here to take the spot of everybody by any means necessary. So if they need to use this force, they will. So I like it. I like the overall, like how they're being portrayed at this point. Later in the show, we got the Briscoes taking on the Outcast Killers. By the way, Outcast Killers, Diablo Santiago, and Omen Tortuga. They are part of the Ring Crew at this point. They've been kind of in and out of Ring of Honor. Well, they've been a part of Ring of Honor pretty much since the beginning. But at the beginning of the show, they were invited to join the Embassy, which is another faction headed by Prince Nana. Hell yeah, Bubba. Hell yeah. Prince Nana's here. He's starting the embassy, which is a legendary faction. But we're still building to the iteration that would be well known. As of right now, it is just Prince Nana, Xavier, who is out. He just had shoulder surgery, so he'll be out for a few months. I don't know if he has surgery. He has a shoulder injury of some sort that is going to have him sidelined for like 6 or 7 months, I think they said. Josh Daniels, another guy Nana recruited. It's kind of like a bootleg Chris Benoit, honestly. And then now he's brought in the Outcast Killers into the fold. So the Outcast Killers taking on the Briscoes here on night 2. It's really just a Briscoe showcase. It's not a squash match, but it kind of is. Jay hits the Jay Driller at the same time. Mark hits the Cutthroat Driver onto the other Killers. So they get a pretty dominant win here. The Briscoes do, rebounding off of their title loss in the previous night. But this brings out Generation Next. Once again, they want more spots. They want 2 more spots. They want the Briscoe spots, which is pretty bold of old Alexander Shelley here. Shelley says, either give it to us or we're going to take it. Jay grabs the mic. He says, first of all, who the fuck are you for? Which is funny. Who the fuck is this guy? Shelley's like, look, man, it's 4-on-2. Do some math, you hillbilly fucks. But this brings out Jimmy Rave and John Walters, who earlier in the night were attacked by these 4. So now it's 4-on-4. So now we got an impromptu 8-man tag. So we got the entirety of Generation Next taking on the team of the Briscoes, John Walters, and Jimmy Rave. This match might be the match of the month. Maybe. The only thing that gives me pause on that is like so much of this match felt like just moves were happening. It felt like it took a while to kick in. I mean, I got a lot of notes here. I'm going to run through it because as of me talking right now, I kind of forget what happened. So we're going to experience this together. So like I said, Generation Next against that group of 4, their commentary is labeling them as the ROH veterans, which is interesting that we've gotten to a point where there's Ring of Honor of veterans here. But oh, by the way, I also learned here that Jack Evans came out of the Stu Hart dungeon, which is like, what? That's cool, I guess. I guess that's why he stayed in the wrestling eye for so long. That credibility behind him. But you wouldn't guess Jack Evans, who is a breakdancer, dude, backflips and all sorts of shit, but he's of the same kin as those like Bret Hart's and Owen Hart and stuff like that. But fun little nugget I learned here. Beginning of the match, there's a lot of methodical chain wrestling. But this is what I was talking about earlier. Like these 4 guys, these renegades, these vigilantes, they're here to take everybody's spot, but they're handshakes before the match. Let's wrestle. We're going to take over with our wrestling, says Generation Next. Lots of chain wrestling in the beginning. The babyface team, let's call them the veterans. The veterans have control. There's a point where Roderick Strong gets tagged in. He starts chopping the shit out of Jay Briscoe to an extent where I don't think he was supposed to chop him that hard, because it looked like you could tell, like, wrestlers when they're like trading blows, boom, boom, boom. But Roddy was hitting Jay with these chops, and Jay just grabbed him. It was like a hockey fight. It was like, it wasn't clean. It was like a real looking brawl, which maybe that's what it's supposed to be. If so, power to him, man. It was it felt kind of uncomfortable there for a second, like to a point where it was evolving into something real, but it was hype. The crowd was into it, so it was good shit. But the veterans get control again. Walters has Aries and some sort of leg scissors, and he does like these like seated pile drivers on Aries, which is funny. Like he's already sitting on the mat. Aries is in between his legs, and Walters just like pops his hips up a little bit and pile drives him. But the ROH veterans are kind of dominating this first chunk of this match, with the exception of that Roddy spot. Jack Evans with a Pele to Walters, which turns the tide, and so now the Generation Next are in control. You got Jack Evans busting out a moonsault to the outside onto the Briscoes. You got Roderick Strong with a gut check to John Walters. Austin Aries with a draping, spinning neck breaker to Walters. So they're really attacking John Walters because John Walters got pile driven earlier in the night. So they're kind of trying to gang up on him. Briscoes with a springboard doomsday on the Austin Aries. Stereo shooting star presses by Jack Evans and Mark Briscoe. Towards the end here, the action was red hot. Mark Briscoe, it's a really stiff looking cutthroat driver, which is kind of like a burning hammer on the Jack Evans. Jay Driller on the Roddy. Aries with the 450 on the Jay Briscoe. Walters goes for his cliffhanger DDT off the second rope once again, but almost kills Austin Aries. Almost drops him right on his head from the top rope. Evans hits a 450 to the outside. Alex Shelley with a top rope stomp to the back of the head of John Walters. And then locks in the Border City stretch, which is how he won his previous match. Jimmy Rave gets in, tries to make the save, but Austin Aries dives in and stops him, locks in a Ring of Saturn onto Jimmy Rave, and John Walters taps out to Alex Shelley's Border City stretch. Dude, this honestly, like the first half of this match is pretty boring. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't know if it was because I was sick when I was watching this and maybe I was in and out of it. It took a while to kick in. Plus, we've seen these guys a lot already on this show, so we're getting to the point where it might be a little bit of fatigue coming to that point where it's like, all right, we get it. But ultimately, this match really kicked in, really high energy towards the end, really showed some kind of killer instinct in this Generation Next faction, and they were ultimately able to get a big win. Cumulatively, this whole faction was over 4 guys that have been stalwarts in Ring of Honor. A couple of these guys since the beginning. So, and John Walters is red hot right now. Jimmy Rave hasn't had a lot of wins up to this point, but he's been prominent, for at least a year. But Generation Next was able to get a pretty definitive win over these guys. So, all in all, from their introduction to them taking people's spots in matches, to the opening 6-man, to Alex Shelley's win over Jay Lethal, to this 8-man win. I mean, goddamn, pal. Generation Next is the top faction in Ring of Honor at this point. Easy. Prophecies, Christopher Daniels, who knows where he's at? Prophecies dwindling. They lost their titles and they lost their rematch. Special K, the running thread throughout these shows that and I quote, the party's over. Special K, they're sad. They lost their feud to the Carnage crew. They lost all their matches on these shows. Special K is down in the dumps. Prophecy's down in the dumps. We got some more factions arising. But as of right now, nobody's doing it like Generation Next is. Very excited. And we're getting to the point in Ring of Honor where it's like, all right, we're starting to see these recognizable names. Like these Mount Rushmore, like these Hall of Fame level in the context of Ring of Honor. These like Hall of Fame type guys. Austin Aries, 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion. Roddy Strong, former Ring of Honor World Champion, still going to this day. Jack Evans, I don't know his title history, but I mean everybody knows who Jack Evans is, for better or worse. The stuff he's doing from a physicality standpoint, nobody else is doing in the world. And Alex Shelley, again, still going to this day, was just TNA World Champion a few months ago. He's the head of this faction, the mouthpiece, probably the best mic guy in the company at this point. And he's still so new. All these guys. Roddy Strong just made his debut at the previous show. Austin Aries has only had 1 match. Jack Evans has just been in the midst of 6-man scrambles. Alex Shelley has had some pure matches here and there, but hasn't really had much of a spotlight on him. But these 4 guys cumulatively, this is a perfect example of the sum being greater than the parts. The sum of the parts being greater than the parts that you know what I mean, right? The fact that these guys came together and were able to amplify everybody involved in this is good shit, man. I'm looking forward to more Generation Next. I'm looking forward to see where they go. Lots of big things in their future. So we'll see. I say that and watch them just like disband on the next show. But it's a faction I've always heard of, Generation Next, but I haven't really seen much in action. I've seen, Alex Shelley and Austin Aries I've seen them in TNA, you know what I mean? But I haven't seen them in Ring of Honor, like where their roots are. So good start for this faction. That was probably the biggest takeaway from this month is Generation Next. Establishing 4 new guys and 4 guys that are going to be big parts of Ring of Honor for years to come. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's where we are at with that. But enough of that. Let's get into what everybody tuned in to hear about. I've set it up. I mean, that was the pre-show. Now we're at the real show here, right? The topic that everybody wants to hear about is who took a duty in the Carnage Crew's bags. To recap, Carnage Crew faced off against Special K in a steel cage match a few months ago. Carnage Crew won, devastating pile driver off the top rope from DeVito to Angel Dust. Dusty Rhodes was involved. It was a big moment. Big moment. Carnage Crew was celebrating with Dusty Rhodes backstage with a few beers, you know, as they do. A couple guys of the same ilk. They're enjoying some beers. They're with their hero, Dusty Rhodes. They're having a good old time. They're on cloud 9, and then they look in their bag, and they see duties. Now, it's unclear if it's one duty or several duties. But it's got to be at least 2, I would think, based on what we learned this month at Generation Next. Who dutied in Carnage Crew's bags? Well, we find out. What's your guess, everybody? Who do you think made a duty in the bags of H.C. Loke and Tony DeVito? Well, the answer to that question, it's 2 people. It is Masada and Danny Daniels made duties in the Carnage Crew's back. So Masada was a member of Carnage Crew. He was a Carnager. Came out in the cutoff t-shirt, the jorts, everything. He was a part of this faction. He was with them when they won that match a few months ago in the steel cage against Special K. But I guess at some point he relieved himself in the bags of his brethren, along with Danny Daniels, who we've seen a little bit of up to this point. Not a lot. Not a lot to say about Danny Daniels. He wears a singlet. He wrestles. Kind of a British. I don't think he's British, but he kind of feels like an old British wrestler. This is how I think. So I guess Masada and Danny Daniels are now in cahoots with each other, just dutying in people's bags. And the way this is unveiled is very kind of anticlimactic because Carnage Crew comes out. So it's Loke, DeVito, and Masada. They all come out to the ring together. Wait, hold on. Let me revisit. What happened here? Because my notes were not very clear here. So let's revisit this. All right, so we have the Carnage Crew coming out. There's Masada. There's Loke. There's DeVito. There's Just Incredible. The whole gang. All 4 are here. Four man strong. They get in the ring. This is on Generation Next, by the way. All right, we're all in the ring. We're all brothers. Everything's hunky-dory. Now it cuts to their opponents, Trent Acid. Trent Acid's out. He's sexually assaulting crowd members. No, the crowd members sexually assaulting him. Danny Daniels, I guess his partner here. But in the ring, off camera. Okay, that's why I was so confused. Off camera, Masada attacks HC Loke from behind. And immediately, which this is a brilliant freeze frame on Loke here, or on DeVito. DeVito immediately accuses him of shitting in his bag. Let's keep playing. And then Danny Daniels and Trent Acid attack from behind. So actually, was Trent Acid also a part of this dutying? Did he also make a duty in the bag? A Trent Acid poop feels watery. I don't know.
There's the bell, and I'm shocked. Masada just turned on Loke and DeVito and Just Incredible. And Danny Daniels, of all people, coming out with Trent Acid. It was Danny Daniels and Masada who crapped in the Carnage Crew's bag on March 13th.
All right, so Danny Daniels and Masada, according to Gabe, are the ones who soiled the bags of the Carnage Crew. So That's where we're at. So is that the ending that everybody's been yearning for? So now we have a new Carnage crew. People today, we're watching the Bloodline splinter off into different versions. You know, we spent years watching different versions of the Bullet Club. You know, Bullet Club Gold, Bullet Club, the TNA one, the House of Tor, like different versions of the Bullet Club, different versions of the Bloodline, different versions of Nexus, like all of these legendary factions. They took their influence, they took their inspiration from the Carnage crew here. Now we have the Carnage crew and the new and improved Carnage crew of, I guess, Masada and Danny Daniels. And I don't know if Trent Acid's a part of that or what, but so ultimately, this new Carnage crew wins as Trent Acid hits a Yakuza kick onto HC Loke for the win. So I guess we got a new feud brewing there. We'll keep tabs on it. I don't know if it culminates in a poop and a duty on a pole match. I don't see any other solution. But I'll keep you abreast as we continue along. Just wanted to touch on that because I know everybody's been hungry for the answer there. So, what a weird. I just try to put myself in the shoes of like being so mad at somebody that I poop on their property, like I poop on their valuables, like just the act of aggressively pooping. Like I can't wrap my head around that. Like you got to time it to when you have to poop and when you're mad at somebody. And it's like, where do you aim it? What's the stance look like? I've never pooped on anybody's objects personally. Maybe I need to bring on somebody who has, and they can inform me of the technique and of the mindset in general. So it's a lot to get into. It's a lot to get into. That could be a whole different episode in and itself. So, but outside of that, what else is there to get into from this month? We've covered the big ticket items here. Well, most of them. Let's touch on some of the new factions outside of Generation Next that have kind of arisen. Outside of Generation Next, we got the new Carnage crew. We got the Embassy, which we've touched on, which, by the way, had a weird cameo from Ox Baker again. We had it was an 8-man tag on night 1. It was DeVito, Loke, and the Ring Crew Express taking on the Embassy, which was represented by Diablo Santiago, Omen Tortuga, Josh Daniels, and Prince Nana. So yes, Prince Nana's still wrestling at this point, which is fun. By the way, Nana's a fucking beast. By the way, he's a bruiser in there. I mean, he's like a pretty big guy. Like he wrestles, he's like a powerhouse at this point. He's very fun to watch, but he can also move. Ultimately, the Carnage crew, they end up winning with like a pendulum leg powerbomb catapult lariat. That's what I noted. That's what I wrote in my notes. I don't really know what that means. I don't know. But the Carnage crew wins against the Embassy. So the Embassy has not seen as much success as Generation Next. But again, I know they add members, probably remove members. So we're in the very early stages of that. But that's just another thing to keep tabs on. I'm always in for more Nana on my TV, personally. But another faction we got is the Rottweilers, which has been established before this month. But we've kind of gotten it strengthened here. So as of right now, the Rottweilers is headed by Julius Smokes, who's kind of just like the mouthpiece, I guess, of the group. And Homicide. I believe those are only 2 guys. I think, who's the big, tall guy? What is his name? He was in Special K. He was the bodyguard. I don't know. He's not around anymore, so I don't even know if he factors in. But we've brought in the Rott. So this is a kind of a mindfuck here. So if you remember from the last show, we were introduced to the Havana Pitbulls, the team of Rocky Romero and Ricky Reyes. Now, Rocky Romero is not here this month, but Ricky Reyes is. And he takes on Samoa Joe in night 1 in a non-title match, which is fucking awesome, by the way. But apparently Ricky Reyes is a part of the Rottweilers now, and I would assume Rocky Romero is as well. But the Rottweilers, the few that were getting off the ground here, and while Generation Next, I was bringing up how they're kind of just wrestling heavy, like they're just here to wrestle better than everybody else, whereas the Rottweilers have a bit more of a gang mentality behind them, and we'll touch more on that later with how the show ends. So, and By the way, this all kind of leads us to the main event of night 2, which is a no DQ match between Samoa Joe and Homicide for the Ring of Honor World title. But each man, Joe and Homicide, they each have singles matches on night 1 leading up to that. Samoa Joe faces Ricky Reyes, new member of the Rottweilers, with Homicide in there, so it all links together. Which, by the way, so we have a pit bull is now a Rottweiler, which is that what kind of transition deal are we? We're not going to get into that. Gary Michael Capetta comes out again. The commissioner says, "Hey, Homicide, we can't have you and Joe in the same place right now. You're just going to tear each other apart." Homicide threw a fireball at Samoa Joe last month, and then Joe retorted and attacked his buddy Julius backstage. So these guys are heated. They want to kill each other. Homicide tried to kill Joe with a noose a couple months ago, and it feels like they just don't mention that anymore. So a very heated rivalry. Homicide's also pissed that Joe, because him and Joe had a match last month in which Homicide, he had the pin. The ref counted to 2. Joe kicked out, but the ring bell went off. So Homicide thought he won, but he didn't. And then the match got back underway, and Joe was able to capitalize and win. The Homicide feels that he was robbed of the title there. So that's the source of his umbrage, I guess. Oh, and by the way, also last show, somebody shut the lights off to enable Homicide to hit this fireball. And it turns out it was Ricky Reyes that did it. So that's how he kind of comes into the fold. That's the story they're telling there. So we got Samoa Joe versus Ricky Reyes. By the way, is the debut of Joe's "The Champ Is Here" song, which is pretty iconic if you're a Ring of Honor fan. Joe and Homicide, before the match, Joe and Homicide are fighting through the curtain because GMC throws out Homicide before Joe comes out. So Homicide goes to the back. But of course, Joe's waiting to come out there. So of course they're going to fight. So they fight through the curtain. They get into the ring. They're still fighting. Ricky Reyes is able to take advantage. Pummels on Joe a little bit. Runs at Joe in the corner, but Joe with his classic Uranagi out of the corner. This match was really fun, actually. A lot of good strike. Ricky Reyes, I don't know what his exact background is, but he seems to have some sort of kickboxing, some sort of striking background. And Joe, we all know Joe's style. So that was able to mesh very well. A lot of stiff strikes, a lot of fun striking combos and reversals and counters between these two guys. There's but basically, like, if you see these guys like next to each other, Joe's like twice the size as Ricky Reyes. So like one Samoa Joe roundhouse kick equals like 10 of Ricky's. So that being said, Ricky's going for the eyes of Joe, so he's kind of letting that Rottweiler mentality in, where he's doing anything it takes to win. There's one point where Joe slaps the holy dick fuck out of Ricky Reyes. If I can find this, I'm gonna splice this in there because the audio is just magical.
Our way up, we're going to be main eventers from the start. Oh my God.
Yeah, they fight. We get all the Joe classics, the old leg kicks on the outside against the barricade. I didn't expect Ricky Reyes to kind of stay in this fight. I was kind of expecting more of a squash, but there were some points where Ricky seemed like he might have it. At one point, Ricky locked in a triangle choke on the Joe. Fights through and hits a tornado DDT on the Joe as well. Gets a 2 count. Ricky hits a very nice Saito suplex. We get to the end of the match. There's really fun strike exchanges back and forth between these two guys. Really hard hitting, but ultimately Samoa Joe is able to win with the Island Driver. Pins Ricky Reyes, but Ricky looked really good in this match. I hope Rocky Romero comes back as well, so we can see those two guys team together. But as a singles, I was impressed by Ricky here. But you can't beat, you don't beat 2004 Samoa Joe. You're gonna need a little bit more than that. But I thought this did a good job in establishing the Rottweilers as a faction, even through loss. Him and Homicide and Julius Smokes. I mean, this whole package deal seems very, very vicious, I guess, as a Rottweiler would be. Speaking of vicious. Sid Vicious is here. No, I'm just kidding. No, we got a return here, actually. The return of Brian Kendrick. Spanky is back in Ring of Honor. So this is following his brief WWE run, which I've covered on the podcast as well. His 2003. I don't know exactly when he was released. Let's see here, actually. Let's look it up. We have a computer in front of us. Why don't we look it up? Brian Kendrick. Because Kendrick, he came in, he was kind of thrusted to the top, like, immediately. Like, he was kind of like the schlubby guy. Not schlubby, but just like the guy, he's like, you don't think he belongs, but he's able to kind of fight from underneath. Like, he had matches with Brock Lesnar. He got destroyed by Brock, but then he went on and had a feud with John Cena and things like that. A little bit in the cruiserweight division. Let's see here. He was with WWE from late 2002, and he was released in January of 2004. So yeah, him and Paul London did team a little bit before his release. So what, about a year and change, probably like 14, 15 months he was with WWE. And of course, he would eventually go back, become WWE champion. But that's where we're at in the timeline here, is after that run in WWE, he's back. He's back in the company that made him what he is. And he's here to take on Homicide. So pretty big match right out the gate for old Spankers. Kendrick seems a little bit in this match. I mean, my takeaway here was that he felt a little more grounded. Like in 02, I mean, Spanky is a highlight of 2002 Ring of Honor. But back then, he was very like wacky and kind of cosmic. And he was more akin to like the Brian Kendrick, if you're familiar with that gimmick from WWE. Like, he was kind of weird and like wore glasses and jackets and colorful and like the tassels. But here he just kind of felt like a normal wrestler a little bit. I feel like I could use a little bit more of that character that he established earlier in his career, but I don't know. You're never going to hear me poo-poo Brian Kendrick. I was a big fan of it here. His match with Homicide. There were several points in this match where Homicide's he's trying to use a chair against Spanky. So again, this Rottweiler's faction, everybody's rabid. They don't care about the rules. They're unchained. They're untamed. They can't be tamed. Type of deal here. So Homicide's also being pretty cocky, and the crowd's really into Spanky, and he's yelling at the crowd when they're chanting for Spanky. And Spanky's in this, man. I mean, he hits the sliced bread on the Homicide on the outside, right on the floor. But Homicide comes back, busting out some fun offense of his own. He hits a pile driver, Tiger powerbomb, rolling cradle necklock submissions. Like, it was a fun match. It was a really fun back and forth match. In the ring, Kendrick goes for the sliced bread, but it's countered into the cop killer. He goes for the cop killer, but that's countered into a victory roll. 1-2 kick out. So we got some really fun false finishes towards the end of this. Julius Smokes eventually gets involved, which again, you don't see a lot in Ring of Honor. So that's real, again, pushing the narrative that they'll do anything. They don't care about the construct of Ring of Honor. They want to win at all cost. He tries to interfere when Spanky's on the top rope, but Spanky kicks him off the apron, hits the elbow onto Shawn Michaels. He hits the elbow onto Homicide, which is very reminiscent of his trainer, Shawn Michaels. Like, it looked like a picture, like a replica of it. Spanky then hits the sliced bread on the Homicide, but Julius Smokes pulls the ref so he can't make the count. Homicide's able to capitalize on this and ultimately hits a top rope ace crusher, followed by a big lariat for the win. So Homicide beats Spanky in his return match. But overall, this is, again, one of the best matches of this month for sure. I'd probably put this number 1 or 2. Lots of counter wrestling towards the end. Kind of gives us a glimpse into this new side of Homicide, because he was a fan favorite pretty much all through 03 and through most of 04. But now he's this feud with Joe has kind of pushed him over the edge, and now he's just this rabid dog. It's this rabid Rottweiler. So in this match, we got a lot of the chicanery that you don't typically see in Ring of Honor, like distracting the ref, pulling the ref, getting involved on the apron from the valet or the manager or whatever. But after the match, Homicide, he beats Brian Kendrick, and he grabs the mic and he calls out Samoa Joe, who are going to have fight next week. Joe sprints to the ring, but there's too many Rottweilers. It's Homicide, it's Julius, it's Ricky Reyes. They all gang up on Joe, and Homicide gives him a brutal pile driver. And then Ricky Reyes gives him a pile driver. And then Homicide gets in his face, this lifeless corpse of Samoa Joe, and he says, Ichiban, motherfucker. I will be the new world champion. So it's set up next week's world title match really well. And with that, I think we should close this bad boy out and talk about this world title match. It is a relaxed rules, there must be a winner match, is how it's labeled on Cage Match. It's a no disqualification match. Samoa Joe defending the title against Homicide. So we're about 15 months into this reign of Samoa Joe. By far the most dominant champion Ring of Honor has seen at this point. Still to this day, one of the most dominant champions. So we got Joe and Homicide. We've talked about the build-up. We've talked about how we got here, the fireballs, turning out the lights, the factions, all that stuff. And when I was watching this match, there's one thing I noted. I think a very underutilized method of generating heat for a match is what you do in the entrances. I feel like it's a lost art nowadays because I think everybody just goes to the ring. They're trying to memorize all their goofy little spots they're trying to do. But here, Homicide comes out. Joe comes out. As Joe is coming out, Homicide's in the ring. Joe, they're staring daggers into each other. He's walking around the ring, but he's throwing chairs in the ring. He's trying to kill Homicide before he even gets in the ring. Like, they're really kind of establishing this feeling of, I want to kill you. Like, these guys hate each other and they're going to beat each other until somebody's not breathing anymore. That's what they're establishing here just from the entrances. And I feel like this is such an underutilized tool nowadays. Set the tone very well. Fight gets underway. By the way, they got the streamers here, which is kind of a new thing for Ring of Honor. They're doing the ring intros for this main event title match. They introduce Homicide. Then they introduce Samoa Joe, and then the whole crowd, those streamers, so many streamers hit the ring. And as the streamers are flowing into the ring at Joe, Homicide jumps Joe. In the midst of all these colorful streamers, you just see fucking Homicide beating the shit out of Joe. Just a crazy visual. Eventually, Joe takes out Julius and Homicide at once with one suicide dive. We get Olay kicks to Julius. So Joe's trying to take out Julius Smoke so he can't get involved in this. Back in the ring. I mean, the energy is just great. I mean, it's bam, 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 right from the bell. Still trying to gather up these streamers. Still trying to get them out of the ring. Crowd super into this. You can feel the heat from these two. Homicide tries to engage in a headbutt battle, which is very short-sighted from the Samoan. Quickly realizes that's a bad idea. Joe gets knocked out to the outside. Homicide goes for a suicide flip. But Joe gets out of the way, and Homicide goes flying through a table ringside. Just, again, just the audio and the visual, just very devastating looking stuff. Speaking of devastating, Homicide gets back up. Him and Joe go back at it. Homicide breaks out his fork. Yeah, his fork. Drives it into Samoa Joe's head, busting him open. And commentary makes it a point. I haven't fact-checked this, but apparently this is the first time Samoa Joe has bled in Ring of Honor. Apparently it's a very rare occurrence, so that was a big deal for Homicide to get that edge over him, to bust Joe open. Homicide's bleeding as well, by the way. There's so much blood here. A lot of blood here. Joe counters a flying crossbody with a sidewalk slam, hits a Death Valley driver for a 2 count. Joe brings Homicide to the top rope to go for an avalanche muscle buster, which is how he beat Homicide in their first title match. But Homicide knows this and he counters, fights out of it, and hits a top rope cutter and a big lariat, which is how he beat Spanky. That same combination, but this is only able to get a 2 count over Samoa Joe. Homicide hits a pile driver, which is what he did to Joe the previous week. Hits a pile driver onto Joe for a 2 count. Then Homicide hits a neck breaker onto Joe and locks in an STF, which is how he beat Joe in their unsanctioned match from a few months ago, but he used a noose. I don't know why Homicide didn't break up the noose here. That's how you beat Joe. But as Homicide has this STF locked in, he didn't have a noose, but he did still have this fork in his boot. So as he has this STF locked in, Homicide breaks out this fork and starts stabbing Joe in the forehead. Brother, we know wrestling is what it is. We know it is what it is. You can see the punctures into the forehead. I don't know what kind of gimmicking you could do this for, whatever. You could see this fork stabbing Joe in the head and making Joe bleed. You can see it. I guess it's similar to Blade. I don't know. But it is gruesome looking. Gruesome. The camera pans right in there. Ching, 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 ching. Cuts him right back open with this fork. Ref eventually confiscates the fork. Joe's able to, this pisses off Homicide. He's yelling at the ref. Homicide turns around, runs into an island driver from Samoa Joe. 1, 2 kickouts. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody kick out of the island driver up to this point. So that was a big deal. Homicide gets back up, fights back, hits a lariat to the back of the head of Samoa Joe, goes for the cop killer. But Samoa Joe counters it and hits a brain buster for the win, which is very caught me off guard. I've never seen Samoa Joe win with a brain buster before. But I guess that's just the cumulative, all the damage that's been done. It makes sense. I mean, it's a devastating move. I don't know, maybe it was an audible, whatever the case is. Samoa Joe comes out on top. He beats Homicide once again, retains his title after a brutal, brutal match. But that's not how the show ends. The show ends with Homicide in the ring. Samoa Joe, he celebrates, he leaves. Homicide's in the ring. He grabs a mic. He goes on a tirade against this crowd. He says, "You all make me fucking disgusted." And then so he remember, this is Generation Next. We're in a tent. Homicide, he goes on a rampage. He goes out there, he starts flipping tables, he starts throwing chairs. And I'm gonna let the commentary tell the story here.
Get it back to the ring. Homicide has snapped again. The crowd showing their appreciation of Homicide. They're showing that they still love Homicide. They appreciate him, but he doesn't care. Oh, what happened when we were off air was just unbelievable.
You all make me fucking disgusted.
I can't believe what Homicide's saying.
All of you, I do not need your fucking tears. The bad guy is fucking here.
Homicide has snapped. This crowd still refuses to boo him after all he's done over the years, and it's just making Homicide more insane. What's he doing? He's tearing up the ringside area. Homicide has gone insane. The demon has risen, and he's just destroying everything in sight. He's going after the camera guy now. No one is safe. The demonic Homicide has emerged. Security is running. Everyone's running. He's going after the pillar that's holding up the tent. Nobody is safe. Let's get out of here. I can't believe it. Homicide going after everyone in sight. The demon has risen. Homicide has snapped. He's going after the pillars. Evacuate. Evacuate.
Evacuate! Evacuate! Fucking Gabe, man. Gabe. This guy. He's gonna bring down the tent. It's good shit. That's not good shit, but it's funny shit. It was entertaining shit. Is how I'll put this, but so this month ends with Homicide going on a rampage and apparently trying to murder everybody in the tent and also himself, I guess. I don't know. So that's where we're at. So Homicide's unhinged. The Rottweilers are unhinged. What's in store for them? What's in store for Ring of Honor? What's in store for the Ring of Honor fans coming out of this? You're just going to stay tuned to find out as we truck along in this timeline of Ring of Honor. So that's the big hubbub. That's what's going on in Ring of Honor in May 2004. Hope you guys enjoyed this journey. I know I sure did. With that, that's pretty much all Daddy has for you today. Make sure you give this podcast a like, subscribe, a comment if you're watching. Leave it a rating, a review if you're listening on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. Follow me at Apron Bump on all the social medias. Like I said, catch up on this whole timeline. It's all available. All the shows up to this point are available on the Apron Bump podcast, wherever you watch or listen. And with that, I think that's all we got for you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Love you. Love you. Big old smooches all over your forehead and belly button and tummy. Your belly button and tummy? I guess those are different things, right? You could just lay smooches on a belly button or a tummy. Doesn't have to be both. But you're getting both. Little raspberry in your ear. All right, I'm gonna hit stop on the record. I'm hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.